G. Plekhanov. May 1, 1891. Speech first, comrades. Today, to pass, should remain indelibly in everyone's memory. Only today, for the first time, we had to gather from all parts of St. Petersburg for this modest meeting and for the first time hear from comrade workers an ardent word calling for a fight against our strong political and economic enemies. Yes, comrades. Seeing such an enemy and not knowing what his strength is, seeing their small handful of people who take on this struggle, some of us cannot hope for the success of our victory, they leave our ranks in desperation and cowardice. Night, comrades. We must firmly hope for our victory. We only have to arm ourselves with strong weapons, and these weapons are knowledge of the historical laws of developed humanity, about. We only need to arm ourselves, then we will defeat the enemy everywhere. No way to send him to his homeland, imprison us in prisons, and even send him to SLBPR will not take away this weapon from us. Everywhere we will find a field of victory, everywhere we will pass on our knowledge, in the homeland to your peasants, and in prisons you will explain to prisoners that they, too, are people and have all human rights, so that they are aware of these rights, pass on their knowledge to others and organize them into groups. This is the guarantee of our success. Yes, comrades. We often have to read or even hear about workers' demonstrations in the West, who move in huge and well-proportioned columns through the cities and instill fear in their exploiters, but if we take a closer look at the developed history of this well-proportioned mass, then it will become clear to us that this mass originated from a group of people as small as we are. Let us take a look, albeit briefly, at the historical development of the social democratic pariah in Hermanch, that most powerful and orderly organ in the West. It also came from a small group of people grouped in one productive area, like our Petersburg. These workers were the first to realize their human rights and began to convey their convictions to other workers, for which they began to be persecuted and expelled by the government to the provinces. But even this order served to the benefit of the workers. These workers found comrades for themselves and, organizing all together, formed one indivisible alliance. Why should we, Russian workers, despair, run away from these struggling comrades who are embarking on such a great deed as the cause of liberating the people? Looking at all the historical facts that boldly make us hope for victory, we must also think about our Russian people. Until then, he will bear the burden placed on him until he is aware of his human rights and does not realize that he, the worker, should have the most right to enjoy all the wealth produced by his labor. Our workers must also know that labor Russian workers, to despair, to run away from these struggling comrades who are going to such a great cause as the cause of freeing the people. Looking at all the historical facts that boldly make us hope for victory, we must also think about our Russian people. Until then, he will bear the burden placed on him until he is aware of his human rights and does not realize that he, the worker, should have the most right to enjoy all the wealth produced by his labor. Our workers must also know that labor Russian workers, to despair, to run away from these struggling comrades who are going to such a great cause as the cause of freeing the people. Looking at all the historical facts that boldly make us hope for victory, we must also think about our Russian people. Until then, he will bear the burden placed on him until he is aware of his human rights and does not realize that he, the worker, should have the most right to enjoy all the wealth produced by his labor. Our workers must also know that labor until then, he will bear the burden placed on him until he is aware of his human rights and does not realize that he, the worker, should have the most right to enjoy all the wealth produced by his labor. Our workers must also know that labor until then, he will bear the burden placed on him until he is aware of his human rights and does not realize that he, the worker, should have the most right to enjoy all the wealth produced by his labor. Our workers must also know that labor is the engine of all human progress, that he is the creator of all science, art and inventions. As soon as the people know all this, then no army can keep them from self-liberation, and it is the direct inalienable right of all developed workers to bring such consciousness to the people. This was shown to us by the struggle of our intelligentsia in the 1970s and 1980s. Take a look, comrades, at this struggle from a historical point of view, how these friends and fighters of the people brought all their knowledge to the people and, often sacrificing even their lives, justified themselves before history and did not remain indebted to the people. Everywhere they responded to the people's groan and gave their hands to help, but the people did not recognize them as friends and looked at them with incredulity. East. So now we, comrades, will understand our modest sign among the people. Will we not be able to convey it to the people, and will they not understand us now, because we are closer to him, like an intelligentsia? Only one thing is a pity, comrades, that we have no help from anywhere, like the former workers, with the exception of a small handful of people to whom we will always give our heartfelt thanks. Today's youth does not hear the people's groan, and does not see the people's grief. They do not even think about the people. These young people are nothing but a parasitic element of society. They are only capable of destroying the products of social labor, and do not even think of paying the people for these labors. Too bad, comrades. That memory, until a better future, one has to put up with the impossibility of getting together and holding a meeting, following the example of workers in Western countries, on May 1st, but should be content with the opportunity to get together on Sunday. Of course, every one of us knows that now we cannot produce any kind of manifestation, and not only something similar to what we have produced in the West. I think that each of us now involuntarily compares our forces with the forces of the Western Bachi, but remember that not one of us from this comparison, looking at our small number, is in despair, because we still have enough strength and energy so as not to lose heart and not only give up because the business has almost only to begin. The Western workers are suffering, like us, under the yoke of the capitalist system, i.e., one in which all the products of labor produced by the workers are sold by the manufacturer for his own benefit, and the workers are paid for their labor only so much that they cannot die with hunger. Dissatisfied with such an outrageous order, which deprives them of the benefits of their labor, they often thought about the situation in which they find themselves, and came to the conclusion that it is possible to get out of it only through the mental development of the people, since everything depends on its development. Having come to this conclusion, they did not stop only at words, but tried to develop and organize themselves in a close organizational structure, and with it they have a cash desk, with the funds of which they distribute books and publish magazines and newspapers in which to carry out their ideas. They try to support strikes, although they do not consider them to be the fundamental means for the destruction of evil, because they can, with a favorable outcome, only improve the situation of the workers in the least, but not free them from under the yoke of capital. Gradually gaining strength through vigorous activity, from time to time, by various means, they made society and the government feel their strength and presented their demands, and the government was forced to satisfy some of the requirements. For example, gave a constitution, freedom of the press, freedom of meetings and organizations, etc. rights, when pro-Britain. Which it became much easier for them to fight the existing economic system. One of these means, to which they wanted to make feel their strength and immediately present one of the important demands, was a huge manifesto on the day of May 1st. With this manifestation, they demanded the establishment of an 8-hour day by the legislative order. From a comparison of the manifestations of last year and the present, it is clear that their strength is growing, so that they give hope in the not very distant future to see that better and just system to which they strive. Paying attention to the situation of our workers, we will see that they also suffer greatly from arbitrary kulak exploitation, which is almost not restrained by anything, because our workers, according to the senior government and factory workers, being in a downtrodden state and full of ignorance, they cannot repulse arbitrary robbery, which is what gives rise to greater impudence to ruthless predators. Of course, none of the workers like this situation. But they are silent and patient, because they do not know a way out of it, and therefore it is our duty, as more advanced workers, to find out to the workers the reasons why they are in such a bad situation and to show a way out of it. To our credit, I can say that we really realized our duties and, despite all the obstacles and threats of our vile government, we are trying, to the best of our strength and abilities, to develop the lean workers around us. And also recently, together with honesty, with a feeling of gratitude to Plekhanov, as a pointer to the path to freedom and brotherhood, we tried, by giving him an address and being present with a wreath at his funeral, to draw the attention of society to the working question and, as you can hear, succeeded in this. But as you can see, our trial and its success fell on the lips of the government, and it ordered the punishment of workers who dared to think about improving their lives by deporting 3 of them to county towns. It, as you know, always, for the slightest manifestation of dissatisfaction with the existing ugliness, exiles and imprisons the workers and intelligentsia, which sincerely strives, for which I heartily thank her, to help the workers with their strength and knowledge in the struggle against the existing predatory system. But I hope, comrades, that these government measures will not intimidate any of us, but will only arouse great hatred for it and for the existing system, which it protects, and a greater desire to quickly achieve something in which there would be no bydnyh, nor God tykh, but we would enjoy happiness and contentment equally. So let us, comrades, developing and supporting each other, continue the struggle we have begun against the existing evil for the realization of freedom, truth, brotherhood.